Working in the mental health field and being a psychiatric nurse practitioner, you would think that I know all there is about identifying and managing kids with autism. But that is actually the furthest thing from the truth. So in today's video, I want to talk about some things that I learned about autism from once I had kids that were diagnosed that my mental health degree never actually taught me. One of the first things that I realized was it's not always so straightforward to identify somebody who has autism like they teach you in the books. If you're new around these parts, you might not realize I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. What is that exactly? Well, basically what I do is I'm equivalent to what a psychiatrist does. So like I diagnose people, I prescribe medications to help treat a variety of mental health disorders like anxiety, depression. And when I was in school and earning my degree, I learned how to identify autism. So you would think, clearly if I've learned this in school and I do this day to day in my practice, then I should easily be able to see it in my kids, right? Opposite from the truth, that's completely wrong. And what I realized was when there are more subtle nuances to it than the book describes. I also realized that the book describes a more perfect situation or the more obvious symptoms, but kids don't always display those more obvious symptoms. So it wasn't so straightforward to see it when looking at my own kids. A second thing that I learned was that I had to learn how to change my parenting style, or I basically had to relearn how to parent my kids. Now don't get me wrong, I do realize that you have to parent each child individually and there's a set way that you can respond to them based on their needs. But even in that, I still had a set way that I was parenting all of my kids collectively, and a lot of it was based on how I grew up as a child. But when my kids were diagnosed with autism, I realized that some of the standard way that I would discipline them or respond to them were ineffective and actually caused more chaos in our home and more disruption than making things better. So I basically almost had to relearn them and had to learn with them the best way to respond to them, the best way to interact with them, the best way to make their environment more safe and calm for everybody. So it really had me to make things very intentional and also be very specific with the way that I parented each one of my children. Another thing that my degree did not teach me about having kids with autism was the mental toll it was going to take on me as well as my entire family. You would think working in the mental health profession and doing what I do that I would already know to prioritize my own mental health, but I wasn't. Matter of fact, I wasn't even acknowledging how I was feeling. But once I had two boys that were autistic and I had to learn to change their environment and put everything in place to make sure they could be successful, it made me be aware of how I felt. And I soon realized that if I wasn't in a good mental health space, I couldn't respond to them appropriately. So then I had to stop and really prioritize and make sure my mental health was okay. It also made me acknowledge some of the stressors of parenting autistic kids and realizing that I needed to do things, put things in place so I felt like I could adequately respond to them and things that were going on in our lives. I also did the same thing for my kids as well as my husband, and it made us all kind of sit down and collectively make sure that we were all doing check-ins with each other to make sure we're all doing well and responding well as a family. Well, these are just a few of the things that I learned after actually having autistic kids that I didn't learn just from getting a degree. What are some things that you've learned as a parent once you had autistic kids that you didn't know prior to having them? Let's comment those down below. And if you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll put out videos twice a week on Sundays, and I wouldn't want you to miss any future uploads.